Let's talk a little bit about Turkey. You have your book, The Islamic Antichrist, in New York Times bestseller. This is something that is being read all over the world, and you are drawing on some of the things happening in Turkey as being a potential for this being the setup for the Antichrist and Antichrist. What's your position on that?
So this book was initially written in 2003, 2004. Self-published it in 2005, 2006, then it was republished all the way back. So this is now 14 years ago. I state very clearly, at the time, Turkey was looked at as a very secular, moderate nation, great ally of the United States. This is the model, the bridge between Europe and the Middle East. We want to replicate the Turkish model all throughout the Islamic world. They're leaning more secular, et cetera, et cetera. That's what was being said in the news back then. I said, right now, there's no reason to believe that Turkey is about to emerge as the leader of a Muslim empire, to emerge as an Islamist, nationalist entity. But that's exactly what the scriptures teach. Said we have to go not with what's unfolding on the earth, but what the scriptures say.
And how do the scriptures say that? Because, we have to look beyond the English in order to even say that.
Yeah. So there are a handful of passages that we could look at. One of the biggies, of course, is Ezekiel 38:39. Now, what most people, again, the Hal Lindsey model, what they say is that Ezekiel 38:39, the Battle of GOG, MAGOG, they go, that's a Russian-led Middle Eastern invasion of the Middle East. Now, you have a handful of names in this prophecy. It's GOG is the leader of the invasion, and he's from Magog, and he's the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Gomer, he's the head of Gomer to Gorma, Persia, Put, and Cush. Okay, so we've got this big list of these ancient names. How do we understand these names? There's two primary methods of interpreting them. One is you follow what I call the bloodline, lineage, migration, wild goose chase. You trace them down through history. You go, well, the Meshechians became these other, Magogians became the Scythians. They migrated around the Black Sea up into the Russian steppes, and then they mixed with the Scandinavians and they became the Russians. And so Russia, it's all about Russia. And this is what Hal Lindsey does, etc. Mm-hmm. The other method is you simply look at the names as they were understood by Ezekiel, by Ezekiel's immediate audience. How did the prophet understand these names? Where were they in his day? It's not about bloodlines so much as it is about geographic correlation. Persia is modern-day Iran. Cush is modern-day northern Sudan. Lud would be Lydia, or Put would be Libya. So I argue that we should go with one method or the other. If you want to do the lineage thing, and you say, well, Magog becomes Russia, the problem is all of the names listed in Ezekiel's prophecy are Japheth. They're the children of Noah, the Japhethites. They're the white people, the Caucasians of the earth, So according to how they reckon ethnicity, I guess you and I would be considered Caucasians. We trickle down out of the Caucasus Mountains or something like this, however this works. Well, the bottom line is, it's not just Russia. You go, for instance, Gomer. Who did Gomer become? Well, Gomer became the Gemari, became the Cimmerians, became the Gauls, became the Celts. When's the last time that you saw a book that says the coming Scottish-Irish invasion of Israel? All right, that's not very popular. But Russia, oh, that sells. That's that's become very popular. I say forget this whole bloodline lineage thing, because you basically end up with the whole world. You end up with Australia, Canada, the coming Canadian invasion. No, it's talking about these peoples as they were understood by Ezekiel in his day, and it's pointing to GOG is from Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Every scholar, every Bible atlas that you open up will say that was Asia Minor, that was Turkey. That was Turkey. And so we might not know precisely all of the details, but it overwhelmingly points to the region of Turkey as the leader of this coming Middle Eastern coalition, along with Iran, along with Libya, along with Sudan. And it just so happens that all of the constellation, the movement of the nations today is falling right in line. And so since I wrote the book in 2004, again, the past 13, 14 years, Turkey has emerged exactly as an Islamist dictatorship with a nationalist. I mean, under Adolf Hitler, they had German Aryan nationalism. Right now, we have an emerging pan-Islamic nationalism and Islamism, and this call, this drive to revive the caliphate, to bring back the Ottoman Empire. And I believe there's a strong possibility that we are seeing the resurrection of the beast, of that seven-headed beast, that seventh head that suffered a fatal head wound in 1923, when this empire that existed for well over 500 years, arguably the Islamic Empire existed for 1,300 years, it was abolished. And the caliph, the leader of the Islamic world, was abolished. That office was abolished. I believe we're seeing it come back in our day. And the beast that suffered the fatal head wound may be coming back right in front of us.
Yeah. And that beast is not a person. I mean, this is what they've tried to do in the Western world, making the beast a person rather than a nation or a political entity.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to a degree, you know, the Antichrist is the leader, but the beast is really the empire. Sometimes it almost refers to the beast as, but it's kingdom. You know, it's sort of that telescoping. But yeah, and sometimes it's difficult to discern if it's zeroing in on the person or zeroing in on the empire. But I think at the very least, we should begin with the clear typology, which is that it's a kingdom.
Well, I want to get into some of these prophecies in Daniel with you in a little bit, but let's step over and talk about the president of Turkey, about the Islamic Antichrist, and how you see that particular thing all in play.
Yeah. Is it possible that Recep Tayyip Erdogan could be the Antichrist? It's possible. It's possible. I lean toward the idea that he's not. I lean toward the idea that he may be a very specific prophetic character, which is the prominent horn on the goat in Daniel 8. Now, this is pretty specific, but if Daniel 8, most people interpret Daniel 8 to be a historical prophecy. You've got this two-horned ram that comes out of the region of Iran, Persia, invades the Middle East, and then you have this goat. Most translations say Greece, but the word there in Hebrew is Yavan. Well, in Daniel's day, Greece didn't even exist. There was no Greece. And Yavan was a region, sometimes known as Ionia. It was Western Turkey. And of course, Western Turkey, Istanbul, of course, this is where the capital of Turkey is Ankara, but Istanbul is really the heart of Turkey. And so it says this goat responds and crushes this two-horned ram. Well, if we're dealing with a fully end-time prophecy, then it's possible that we're dealing with a clash between Iran and Turkey, and that it refers to this prominent horn on the goat, again, this sort of Turkish goat, as the first king of Yavan. Well, what's interesting is a lot of people say, well, that was Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was the 27th king of Macedonia, of Greece. He wasn't the first king, but Recep Tayyip Erdogan, since the referendum in Turkey, he has ensconced himself as the new sultan, the new caliph. Ever since the establishment of the Turkish Republic under Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, he is the most powerful leader to have emerged. He has set himself as the dictator, and if anything could describe him as the first king, it's quite possible that he could be that first king of Yavan, that after these couple wars, after he's killed, then it says, in his place 4 arise, and out of one of these 4 sections of this new Turkey comes the little horn, comes the Antichrist. And so if it's an end-time prophecy, we could have one of the clearest roadmaps to the coming forward of the Antichrist.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. Let's as far as an end-time prophecy, let's go back in time to what is most commonly understood concerning this prophecy, which is the ram with the 2 horns, Media, Persia, and then you got Alexander the Great coming and smashing them, and then when he dies, his kingdom being divided up, Egypt, Assyria, Turkey, Greece, and out of them comes forth a little horn, which out of Syria comes Antiochus Epiphanes and the abomination of desolation. That's all historical fact, and it fits in there. But yet, there's something more in that prophecy. The angel tells Daniel that this is concerning the end time.
Yeah.
And in this, I think is very important for everyone to understand, because I don't want them just blowing off what you're saying, because, okay, we know this historically, we know how it fits, but yet there's something more here, because the abomination of desolation, this is what, when Antiochus, came in, occupied Israel, they put a statue of Zeus on the Temple Mount, Zeus's birthday, December 25th, sacrificed a pig, a sow, on the altar, made the altar desolate. That was the abomination of desolation then. If we had the book of Maccabees still in the 1611 King James Version of the Bible, and they hadn't taken it out in 1825 by the American and British Bible Societies, we would understand this a little bit more. But yet Yeshua said in Matthew 28, concerning the time of the end, he said that when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by the prophet Daniel, stand in the holy place, let he who reads understand. Mm-hmm. Another, what does this mean? You read it, you have to understand that there's more than one fulfillment of this. Sure. This has transpired in the past, which gives us a picture of the future. Mm-hmm. And so what you're doing is you're taking us into the future, and I believe that with how the Almighty has directed your life, with your command of this history of this part of the world, that your interpretation of this has to be listened to very carefully. So I wanted to say that as a preface that I want to hear more. I want to hear more about this because this makes sense concerning Turkey. Mm-hmm. 2003, we were going up to Turkey. This is where we take a little vacation time. The people that need to renew their visas for Israel, we'd go up there for a weekend and all. And it was wonderful up there. But things have changed deadly. Drastic. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole now. No Jew is going there on vacation nowadays. So back then, this is what you were saying back when everything was at peace. Mm-hmm. Okay, now give us some more background on what Erwan.
Yeah, I love Turkey. It's one of the most beautiful nations in the world, and I have friends in the intelligence community that say, Joel, you can't go through Turkey anymore. They're going to put you in jail, and I have to reroute my planes and everything. It's a big headache. But so here's an interesting point. Is in Daniel 8, it talks about, again, Antiochus as the historical type, a little horn, mm-hmm. and it says, verses 10 forward, it says, and it even exalts himself to be greater than the commander of the host. Now, I believe that's speaking of Yeshua, or of the God of the temple himself. Mm-hmm. And then it says, and it causes some of the host of heaven and some of the stars of heaven to be cast down.
Trampled under his feet.
Trampled under his feet. And you go, well, wait, did Antiochus cause some of the stars of heaven to fall down? Well, then later in Revelation 12, it's actually drawing off of Daniel 8, and it says,
that's right.
I saw a great red dragon, and his tail swept a third of the stars of heaven. Well, in Revelation, it clearly contextualizes that as an end-time event. Mm-hmm. And then Satan and angels are cast out of heaven, and then the shout goes out, and it says, rejoice, all you heavens, because the accuser of our brethren has been cast down, but he knows his time is short. So we go, Revelation tells us that the ultimate fulfillment of this little horn is not in history, but in the last days. So yes, history was a type, a shadow, an initial fulfillment, but the ultimate fulfillment is in that final 3.5-year period. You go, well, wait a minute, but Revelation says it's the dragon that does it. You're saying back here that it's the Antichrist. The Antichrist is just Satan's sock puppet. He is the human embodiment of Satan's activities in the earth. And
it speaks about this in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. About the man of sin being revealed, apocalypto, suddenly uncovered. And that's why, I don't get real into, who is that person, because when he's suddenly uncovered, we'll know who he is, but still we have to be aware, and it is Satan who inhabits him. When he is cast out, taken out of the mesos, is what it says in Thessalonians. And the word mesos is only used in the book of Revelation. That's the area of the throne room of God where Satan stands as the accuser of the brother. And he holds fast to that position. Mm-hmm. He doesn't want that position to go. It takes a war in heaven to then, where he is then comes down to the earth. He knows but he has but a short time. And how long does he have?
3.5 years.
That's right. A times and a half time, 1,260 days, 42 months. It's all the same thing. Go right back to Daniel 8, back to Daniel 12. It's all there. It's telling one story, and it's concerning the last times, not Antiochus.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and so, you look at things like that, you go, Antiochus doesn't completely fulfill all that's being said of him. So we know that there's eschatological references. Interestingly enough, even this issue of the four horns, like you said, usually people say it's Lysimachus, Cassander, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. So, Egypt, Assyria. But actually, there was actually a fifth. There was Antigonus. Antigonus he came the closest to conquering all of Alexander's dominion. He was this amazing character, and it was 23 years after Alexander died before he was killed. But then even his son Demetrius took an area, so even the history there, most Christian commentaries will say clearly 4, but in truth there were really 5 horns. So there's another reason to go, maybe it's pointing to something else at the end. And then as you said, Gabriel says very clearly, Daniel, son of man, listen to me. The vision concerns the time of the end. It concerns the appointed time, the final period of indignation. And so
final period, not the only indignation, but the final period of indignation.
So, with regard to the end times, look, we see through a glass darkly. We need to be humble. If there's one arena of theology that we need to be humble concerning, it's definitely the end times, the future. We need to be watchful. We need to be in prayer. But we need to consider some of these alternative possibilities, to watch and pray as the events unfold in the earth. When the time comes, it will become clear.
Let's talk, we just have a few minutes left, but the revival of the Ottoman Empire, as this is now starting to move out of Turkey, and some hope for the end here.
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing of it is the scriptures say that the beast system, this 10-nation coalition, is going to emerge. Some people think it'll be completely global. I tend to see it being a little bit more regional with dramatic global reach. But over and over and over again, the scriptures in Daniel and Revelation refer to this system of the Antichrist as having 10 horns, 10 horns, 10 horns, of course, plus the Antichrist. So I tend to see it as a little bit more of a regional entity. It talks about some nations will escape his hand. In Daniel 9:27, it says wars are decreed until the end. I go, wait a minute, if wars continue, that means there must be foreign resistor militaries, which mean there must be some resistor governments. It says that news from the north and the east will alarm him. I believe that there will be some nations that will not fully be succumb to the system of the Antichrist. Could be wrong. But the point is, something is coming, and it is going to wreak unparalleled havoc on the earth. There's going to be a persecution. We need to be prepared for that. But the good news, the message of hope, is that beyond this brief period, this short time, this little while, this 42 months, this 3.5 years, we go, I can't live through the 3.5 years. You go, forget 3.5 years. The Messiah is coming back to crush all of the previous kingdoms, all of the pagan kingdoms, this whole present age, this whole present system, all of the things that make us groan. Every day we get up, we open the laptop, we look at the news, we groan, we sigh. We see the corruption, the decay in our own nation. We see the abortion, we see the racism, the violence, this, that, all of the things that make us sigh. Those things are coming to an end. Those things are coming to an end. And Yeshua the Messiah is going to restore the throne of David from Jerusalem. The knowledge of God will cover the earth as the waters cover the sea, and we will go up to Jerusalem. No longer will we merely sing about Jesus or look at paintings. We will see him in the flesh with our eyes. We'll smell the divinely created recipe of incense. We'll smell the barbecue, the temple barbecue as the fragrances, and we'll hear the sound of those singing in the temple, singing the praises of the Messiah as he's on the throne. That day is coming, and we can rejoice. Sometimes it feels dark, it feels scary. We see what's unfolding in the earth. Lift up your head, lift up your eyes, the scriptures say, because your redemption draws near. That's what we need to fix our eyes on. That's biblical hope, and that's what I'm living for, and I know that's what you're living for as well.
Amen. Amen. Well, that day is a little bit far off at this point, and we've got a job to do until then.
Yes, we do.
Everyone is looking for the signs. What are the signs of the end? It's like, okay, here's the sign. Go into the whole world, preach the good news, preach the gospel that I have been teaching and preaching, and I'm with you.
Yep.
That's the sign.
Yep.
And until he comes back, until our rotted body, beheaded body is pulled out of the grave with a new body, or our mortal body puts on immortality, I think that's the most important sign, that we get out and do what he said to do, because we'll be rewarded for all of eternity for being faithful in doing what he said to do.
Amen.